Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. Want to take the risk out of entrepreneurship? Well, let's hear what Will Russell has to say. Will, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Bill. I appreciate it.
Now, Will, you've written a book, Launch in 5, for future entrepreneurs. Am I correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah, for future and existing, I think it's applicable to a range.
Now, but early on in the book, I saw a sentence, I think I saw it, that said, entrepreneurship is for the risk adverse. Mm-hmm. I would have thought just the opposite, that these are people who are willing to take a risk, to gamble, and, all or nothing. Can you explain why you say it's for the risk adverse?
Of course, yeah. And I think that people believe that entrepreneurship has to be very risky. And there's always an element of risk, absolutely. If you're going to there's an element of risk in many things, right? Changing a job, there's an element of risk. So entrepreneurship, while certainly having risk, I think there's a misunderstanding or misinterpretation that it has to be a very, very risky path. And I just don't believe that to be the case. And a lot of what I lay out in the book is based on my own experiences of how I am removing that risk and reducing that risk to avoid the possibility of a big loss of money, a big loss of time. And so what that statement really tries to do is include people who may be under the impression that, to be an entrepreneur, you have to be this kind of person, you have to be super risky. And speaks to all the people who perhaps are a bit more like me and consider themselves very risk averse. And this is a path for them, and of course for anyone to take in moving forward with an entrepreneurship idea, with pursuing that dream, but without taking a massive, massive leap into the unknown.
And you actually say that most successful entrepreneurs are not really daredevils. So I guess they're agreeing with you in the way they practice.
Yeah, I think I see, there's often the iceberg analogy where we see the tip of the iceberg and what's going on under the water is a lot more significant. And I think that's the truth here. We see people put on the front of Forbes magazines. We see stories about Elon Musk and this, that, and the other. And the impression is that because this is what we see, this must be how it is for everyone. And I think what we see is very different from the actual reality. And for most people, whether it's Elon Musk or whoever it might be, yes, they've certainly taken big risks, but oftentimes a lot of those decisions being made in the duration of their journey, actually, there's a lot of safety nets and there's a lot of risk minimization. And so the book gives some examples of that, but I think everywhere you look and everyone you speak to who's an experienced entrepreneur will probably tell you it's actually a case of mitigating risk rather than taking a whole lot of it.
Now, over the years, and we've been on for almost 35 years now, we've had different opinions from people. Some say you have to burn all your bridges and dive right in, and others say, it's good to start slow, either keep your side hustle or your day job or your profession, whatever, and let the first two run together as you're starting off. What's your feeling?
My feeling is always have safety nets. There's a kind of saying of burn the boats, which is quite well known. And I think Tony Robbins talks a lot about burning the boats and the idea that burning the boats, if you were a soldier, attacking a new country, if the boats are burned, there's no way back. There's one plan and that's the only plan. And they must be successful in that plan. I'm of a very different mindset. I believe that there should be a plan B, a plan C, a plan D. And that's really what's going to put you on a path to success, or as I say, a path which minimizes the losses. So yeah, my notion is that keeping whatever you can as a plan B, as a backup, as a safety net, as emergency is important. And in a case that you give there, Bill, of keeping your day job or having side project, I'm very much an advocate of working like that. And in fact, the example I give in the book of the Warby Parker company, that's exactly how they did it. And they were a great example of of a group of founders who mitigated risk, kept their day jobs while building this project, and only really took that final leap when they had a real strong confidence that was the right path.
Is marketing the same for a new company, or are the principles and strategies different?
I think the overarching pieces are the same. However, what I would say about launch marketing and working with new companies in particular are some of the nuances, you can only experience those nuances, or you can only implement solutions and cater to those nuances having experienced them. And so this is why I see a big distinction between people who are marketing perhaps for big brands like Nike or Canon, and the folks we will generally work with who are individuals or small teams looking to pursue their first project or business. And big brands or existing companies don't have to worry about a lot of these nuances, because purely through existing and being an existing brand with a history and a background and a team and credibility, they avoid these nuances. But for new brands, there is no credibility, there is no background. And so they have all these nuances they have to face. So for me, the biggest difference between these launch marketing efforts and for new companies and existing companies is really about the ability to spot and solve problems preemptively. A lot of existing companies don't have to do that as much, but new companies launching, they have to be really quick and on the ball and aware and conscious and looking out for these nuances, because they can really trip them up. And it's the responsibility of the marketer to solve these preemptively so they don't fall into those traps.
Well, I will tell you, in going through your book, the more I read of it, the more I liked it. And I think for an entrepreneur or someone who's thinking in that direction or planning, it certainly reduces a lot of the risk elements of entrepreneurship. And of course, when we talk about risk elements, we can put a dollar sign on that, because the more things we're risking, the more money that may go out the door. We might still be a success, but we're going to either be losing time, be losing money, or heading in the wrong direction for a little while. And if we can reduce that for a lot of companies, that may be the difference if they have to hang in there for 3 months or 6 months before they start seeing actual revenue. The companies you've worked with, can you give us an idea before a company will see revenue about how long it's going to take?
Yeah. So with the launch strategies that you'll read about in my book, I would say month 3, really towards the end of month 3 or month 4 is when we're really, quote unquote, launching and generating a high volume of sales and revenue. However, that doesn't mean we can't generate revenue before that. For example, a popular strategy that we do in a lot of our launches and we speak about in the book is the reservation funnel, the ability for people to put down deposits before the product is even available for full sale. And for a lot of our clients, that's a really interesting and valuable tactic, because it brings in a bit of cash flow that they can then use for the marketing around the launch. So with the launch system that the book talks about, it's usually 5 or 6 months in total to run through that system. And as I say, usually end of month 3, early month 4 is when we're really focused on driving real revenue. But small pieces of revenue, cash in the door, can be happening as early as 3 or 4 weeks in.
That's all good news, but I think that happens because we listen to the good advice you're giving us. Now, you use a couple of unique words in the book that I guess I've heard them before, but not on a regular basis. You use the word replicability, if I'm saying it correctly. Mm-hmm. And you say that's the most effective way for a business to attain a level of permanence. What does that mean?
Just the ability to repeat processes and minimize, human time in order to complete those processes. So, for example, to put that in a context of, let's say, my company, we're a launch marketing company. And as you see in the book, we have a 5-step system. And I guess one of the biggest value points of that 5-step system is it's replicable, and it can be replicated across all sorts of businesses, all sorts of products, B2B, B2C. It could be physical, tangible products. It could be offline. It could be non-profit ideation that we're validating and launching versus an actual for-profit company. And so the concept of replicability for my company is that we have this system, and within it, we have processes that can be used over and over again as a recipe. And that can be used both by our team, by new team members. Should we ever expand, it can be that's knowledge transition that can be easily passed over. So replicability, sorry if I can't pronounce it either, in this standpoint, is about how we can minimize the customization or the unique changes every time we have to repeat a process. And, when I work with a lot of companies launching, and the ones who scale and sustainably grow in the best way have built out processes and strategies from day one that can be replicated easily and don't, for example, just sit in the founder's head, but are instead written documents that can transition and share knowledge across multiple people. That's not needed on day one and day two if you're a solo team or a small team, because that knowledge doesn't need to be shared necessarily. But once you start growing and scaling, you're going to start seeing a lot of poor quality control issues if you don't have processes that are replicable and take out the individual people and just stand alone as their own resources.
Well, we want to find out more about Launch in 5, but at this point in the show, we like to remind our audience that you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. Our guest today is Will Russell. His book is Launch in 5. That's the number 5. And Will, can you tell us the website where we can learn more?
Certainly, a website for the book, launchin5book.com with the number 5. So you can find out more about the book, launchin5book.com. And of course, it's available on Amazon, and you can find it on Goodreads and so on, and all those great places.
And we'd like to also remind our audience that if you're enjoying this show, or you thinking of an entrepreneur and they would like to hear it, you can also go to nccradio.org. That's nccradio.org. Just look for today's show, Launch in 5, by Will Russell. That's our podcast, and you can listen to it at your convenience over and over. The entrepreneur can listen to it, and then you go out and get the book Launch in 5, and you're in good shape to take over the world. Now, Will, how has e-commerce affected your launch system, or has it?
One of the key things that I tried to keep top of mind and convey in the book is that the launch concepts I'm talking about are not specific or only available to use in e-commerce. And so what I felt that the industry has a lot of is a lot of great books, a lot of great content, but they really speak to a specific platform or type of platform. And e-commerce, what we're seeing now, is different from 10 years ago and will be different from 10 years' time from now. So the way I tried to write the book was that it doesn't matter if it's e-commerce. It doesn't matter if it's offline, online, software, hardware, non-profit, for-profit. 100 years from now or 100 years in the past, these concepts are relevant, and this book will remain relevant. Now, 95%, 99% of businesses launching now do tend to have a very strong e-commerce component. So let's not pretend that's not the case. And a lot of the book gives examples that are specific to e-commerce because that is a popular method. But the overarching premise of what I'm trying to write here was that these are concepts that are not affected whether you're launching on e-commerce or not affected on exactly how you launch, but are high-level concepts and ideas that anyone with an idea can pursue and complete, and it will help them launch this idea in an effective and affordable manner.
Now, you have a 5-step process, obviously, from the book's title, Launch in 5. Can you start telling us about those 5 steps? And then as time allows, we'll get into 1 or 2 of them and find out some more information.
Of course, yeah. So it all starts with validation. Step 1 is validation. And this is the most important piece of the jigsaw. You got to validate and prove that your offer, your idea, your product is wanted by the market, and not just wanted by the market, but wanted by the market. And the market is willing to pay the price that you need them to pay to be a sustainable business, right? There's a big difference between people saying, yeah, that's a great idea, I want it, and people being willing to pay $99 or whatever it is to get it. So that validation is the crux of it. And the validation period is what's going to tell us, it's our GPS system as to what happens next. After validation, once we've collected that early data, we're able to build out a route, like a map of what happens next and what this go-to-market looks like. And so then we're going to move through those 4 remaining steps. And steps 2 and steps 3 are audience acquisition and audience engagement. That's usually happening during a pre-launch phase. So you're not actually selling yet. You're just bringing interested customers into your audience and getting them excited. Steps 4 and steps 5, audience conversion, and step 5 is scale. Those are happening once you're selling product. So you've done the validation, you've acquired your audience, you've engaged them, they're all excited. Then we want to convert them into customers, and then we want to scale. We want to build off of this early traction, early success we have. So those 5 steps, again, validation, audience acquisition, audience engagement, audience conversion, and number 5, scale. That's the system, and that usually takes somewhere between 4 and maybe 6 months to implement for most of our clients. And then as the book emphasizes at the end, you get to the end of step 5, and that's not kind of done and dusted. It's rinse and repeat. Back you go again. Back you go to validation, new concepts, new ideas, new strategies, new products, and it's just an ongoing cycle, really.
Now, Will, you mentioned in your book that validation is a go or no-go experience. And can you explain what that means and the feedback you get from someone if it's a no-go?
Yeah, it's tough. It's very tough. I would say that, in my personal opinion, the validation process that we run and the book speaks to is a very, very, very good litmus test for whether a product is going to be successful in the market. And so in that sense, it's a go or it's a no-go. Now, I've got to take or acknowledge that a short validation period running with specific marketing channels cannot be indicative of any possible launch process and any possible marketing strategy. So when we talk about go or no go with clients, the way we really speak to it is this a go with this particular type of marketing strategy? There are many other marketing strategies that someone could employ, such as maybe they want to go to retail, maybe they want to do B2B, maybe they want to have an in-person sales team. Those are all slightly different ways of going to market. So the way I like to speak to validation and the go or no go is that it's really looking at this particular effort that we're currently embarking on. Is this a go or a no go? Although, as I said, from a personal standpoint, I do think it is more accurately indicative at a wider scale. But as you point out, Bill, that's not nice for people to hear. You have a dream, you have an ambition, you spend a lot of time potentially and maybe money before you come to someone like us investing in that idea. To be told by someone who works with you for 2 months that something you've been working on for 2 years is a no-go is a tough thing to stomach, and many people choose to ignore it. That said, all we can do is point to the data. And I've been in this space for a long time, and even I still have a very hard time when a new client comes on board determining, guessing what I think is going to happen, because sometimes it's just, you don't expect it. So we collect the data, and at the end of validation, we'll always present a report to the entrepreneur we're working with as to what we think should happen next. And sometimes we're going to say, yes, go ahead. Here's where we want to focus. This is all the things we saw successful. This is a low-hanging fruit. These are the strategies. Other times we'll say, don't go. We recommend you do not pursue this right now. And rather than being harsh with this is an idea you shouldn't pursue, we're trying to present them with, okay, do not go right now. Currently, we do not think this is going to succeed. And we give them the reasons. Maybe it's the messaging, maybe it's the pricing, maybe it's the use cases being presented, and try and provide options for them to resolve those challenges or get past those changes and to turn that no-go into a go.
Do they, because to an entrepreneur, this is literally their baby. And like a mother with her baby, they've worked on this. They've told everybody what a great idea is. It seems like a great idea. They've retained you to do work on it, etc. And to find this out, does that cause a meeting where you don't want to be in a high room up in a building in case they throw you out of the window? Or
yeah, I never want those. I mean, no, of course I don't want those phone calls ever. The reality is, whichever statistic you want to pull, there's a bunch of different ones, but most businesses don't succeed, and there's a reason for that. So these conversations do happen. I would say, for the most part, they disagree with us, and that's their prerogative. What we're saying, if we're concluding validation and saying we don't think we can pursue this idea like this, we're essentially saying, we're going to step away because we're not going to recommend you invest tens of thousands more dollars in this approach. It's up to them whether they decide to take on board our information or not and agree with us. So many don't. And I can, say that whenever I've seen an entrepreneur ignore our validation data, saying they need to make changes, and they just continued ahead without us and pursued that same idea and with the same approach, I've never seen people succeed. I keep an eye on it, obviously, and our validation data and reporting this is a no-go has never been wrong. Now, sometimes when it reports that something's a go, it can be wrong because there's a lot of variables at play between the validation saying, yes, go ahead, and the actual launch itself. But as I say, for the most part, folks tend to believe in their own idea more than they might believe our data. They pursue it, and I see them fail frequently. Now, some people are very open-minded. If you work with someone who's been an entrepreneur many times over, launched several companies, they understand the purpose of validation. They understand that not every idea is gonna be a profitable business, and so those kind of conversations are actually great. And those conversations are how I like to see it, because my feeling really, if we're going to give a no-go or the validation data suggests no-go, the purpose of that is that we're saving this person or this team a lot of money and a lot of stress by pursuing it. And so when someone else, when the person I'm speaking to acknowledges that and agrees with that, then that's a good feeling. But I will say, for the most part, when an entrepreneur faces a validation data they don't like, they would get defensive. They would protect their baby, and they would push back on the data we've collected. And I understand that we're all human.
Well, before we go further, once again, we want our audience to know that you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan. Our guest today is Will Russell. He's the author of Launch in 5. And Will, would you give us that website once again?
Yes, sir. Yeah, the book, www.launchin5book.com, the 5 being a number 5, launchin5book.com.
And as you're hearing from Will, these are some tips, and the book is great, of how you can avoid the problems that could cause a collapse after a year, 6 months, maybe 2 years, if you do these things at the beginning. And as he said, when he tells people that the data that he's reviewing is showing that a business isn't going to go, you're just kind of putting good money after bad and kind of running in the wrong direction. Are there some typical things or mistakes or errors that people that you see new entrepreneurs kind of continually make and we should be on the lookout for?
Yes, the validation of a product. And we were just talking about validation. I think there's lots of ways to validate things. What I will emphasize is having friends and family or even strangers on the street give you personal feedback on your product or your idea. That is not validation. Validation has to come from objective audiences who are prepared to or not worried about offending you. And, there's a great book called The Mum Book, which talks about how you should never ask your mum whether you have a good business idea, because of course your mum thinks everything you do is great. So I think the number one mistake people make is not objectively validating that this is an idea that's profitable and can be pursued. And then I think a second big problem we see, and this is why companies like mine exist and books like mine exist, because not everyone has the experience and expertise to be able to identify some of these issues. But I think a big challenge of launch marketing is the inability of the challenge of predicting what's going to go wrong. And if you're launching and something goes wrong, it can be like a house of cards just collapsing. And so what's so important and what people so often forget to do or don't even know they have to do is preemptively come up with solutions for these potential problems, such as what happens if a web domain goes down the day you want to launch? Like, what's the plan B? What's the plan C? What happens if the method you're following ends up giving you really high acquisition costs? What's the plan B? What's the plan C? So I think that mainly we're looking at being able to address challenges that only people who have run through that experience and been through it can really identify. And that's the point of the book. The point is that people don't have to come to me and don't have to pay my company money. Instead, they can get all my information, all my experience, and be able to preemptively address all these possible challenges before they embark. And so there's a great section in the book about these objections and exactly how to resolve them. So those are bits and pieces. I think the things that people don't expect or don't prepare for is, number one, objective validation, and number two, preparing plan B, plan C should things not go swimmingly. And I promise you, it's very rare that everything goes swimmingly.
Well, all the things in your book, as I read it, I would have never thought of that. And of course, we've been doing this 35 years, so we've seen a lot of books on marketing, on startups, but you have a lot of very good ideas in here, a lot that's good. In fact, I would think everyone in some way or another is going to save the entrepreneur money, put them on the right track, and just get them geared up to do what they really want to do, make that product a success. Once again, Will, I'd like you to let us know, what is the website? The book is Launch in 5. It's by our guest, Will Russell. And give us the website one more time.
www.launchin5book.com. And that 5 is a number 5. Launchin5book.com.
Will, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure.
I'd like our audience to know that you've been listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan, asking you to please join us again next week at the same time when we will continue our journey to success.